What happens when the most powerful man in the world pleads to shut off the cameras? That's exactly what America saw when Jasmine Crockett calmly confronted President Trump with sealed files hinting at a secret he never wanted revealed. The hearing wasn't expected to be dramatic, especially so late at night. It was after 10 p.m. in Washington, when most people were already drifting off, TVS murmuring in the background. But then, in a moment that stunned the country, Representative Jasmine Crockett leaned into her microphone and asked in a steady, sharp voice, "Mr. President, can you explain why sealed documents suggest a DNA link between you and a woman unknown to the public?" The room froze. Reporters stopped mid-sentence, cameras tightened their focus, and every eye turned toward Trump. His face shifted, first disbelief, then anger, then something that almost looked like fear. Pressing down on the mic, he snapped, "That's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Stop this, gut it out." But Crockett didn't raise her voice. She held his gaze, calm and unshaken, waiting for him to either deny it cleanly or slip up. Across the country, viewers who had been half asleep sat upright. Phones buzzed with alerts, and news anchors interrupted broadcasts. "We're going back live to the oversight hearing. Something big is happening." Crockett, a freshman congresswoman from Texas known for her sharp questions and fearless tone, suddenly had the nation's attention, the chamber filled with whispers, shuffling papers, nervous glances. Even Capitol security shifted uneasily, sensing this was bigger than politics. Clearing her throat, Crockett continued, her tone measured, "These documents, Mr. President, these aren't rumors or speculation, they come from sealed federal files. I want to know, and the American people deserve to know, has this information ever been shared with national security officials?" The way she asked mattered, no shouting, no grandstanding, just laying the question down like an undeniable fact. That alone gave it weight. Trump shot back almost instantly, "We're not doing this. We are not going to sit here and talk about personal nonsense. Somebody cut the cameras, shut them off right now." But his voice cracked, just enough for millions watching at home to notice. The chairman tried to gavel the room into order, but control was gone. Reporters stood, phones raised, tweeting every word. Staffers whispered, passing frantic notes to members. Yet Crockett didn't flinch, her stare locked in, calm and unbroken, sending the clear message: "You can yell, you can threaten, but you can't undo what's already out there." Beyond the Capitol, the reaction spread. Bars in Pittsburgh, coffee shops in Dallas, and living rooms in Phoenix all had one image on their screens: Trump looking shaken, his face red, jabbing the air, begging to end the broadcast. And right then, the clip that would define the night was captured. 47 seconds of raw panic from a president who had built his image on control and dominance, now visibly cracking. Leaning back, Crockett spoke softly, yet her voice carried, "No one is above accountability, Mr. President. Not even you." Viewers at home didn't just hear it, they felt it. Some cheered, some gasped, others simply sat stunned, trying to process what they had just seen. For Jasmine Crockett, though, the moment wasn't accidental. She knew exactly what she'd done. She had forced the most powerful man in the world to face what he couldn't escape: fear. Once seen on live television, can't be unseen. And the silence that followed wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. The oversight chamber had seen fiery clashes before, but this was different. The moment Crockett's words echoed through the speakers, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone seemed to realize they weren't just in a hearing, they were in history. No one was breathing normally. On the Democratic side, lawmakers leaned forward, whispering wide-eyed. Across the aisle, Republican aides scrambled, slipping notes into members' hands. Yet all eyes stayed fixed on one man: Donald Trump. He sat rigid, arms pressed to the desk, his jaw tight as if chewing stone, his lips drawn in a hard line. The man who thrived on being unpredictable was suddenly predictable. He was rattled. "Stop the games," Trump barked, gripping his microphone so hard it rattled. "This is beneath the dignity of this committee. I am the President of the United States, and I will not sit here while lies are thrown at me." His words carried across the chamber. forceful, but uneven pitch just high enough to sound more like panic than strength. Crockett didn't rush. She leaned back in her chair, letting silence work in her favor. By saying nothing, she made sure every camera, every reporter, every person in the room stayed locked on Trump as he tried to steady himself. Pens flew across notepads, laptops, balanced on knees, and one reporter whispered under her breath, "This is the clip. This is the moment." From the far row, Representative Wallace of Oregon broke in. "Point of order, Mr. Chairman. The witness has not answered the question. The question was about disclosure to national security officials." "That's what matters." The chairman's gavel cracked once. "The president will answer the question." Trump waved both hands as if batting away smoke. "There is no question. There is no daughter. This is garbage." But his tone had slipped from anger to desperation, and everyone could hear it. Crockett leaned forward at last, her eyes narrowing. "So, Mr. President, your sworn testimony is that these documents have no validity? That the DNA connection is fabricated?" Trump froze. The word DNA hit heavier than expected. Cameras zoomed in, catching the flicker of hesitation. It lasted less than a second, but live on television it stretched like forever. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Spectators leaned toward each other, whispering furiously. One man recorded, on his phone, sensing history unfolding. At the back, a network staffer mouthed to a colleague, "We've got to run this live." Crockett's voice cut in again, calm but slicing through the noise. "I'll remind you, Mr. President, lying under oath carries consequences. If you want the cameras off, you'll need to explain why transparency stops at your doorstep." Gasps swept the gallery. Republican members shifted uneasily, arms folded tight, some glaring at Crockett as if looks could silence her. But Trump wasn't glaring at them, he was glaring at the cameras, as though sheer willpower could bend the lens to his control, but the cameras were immune to Trump's glare. The chairman tried to cool things down. "Representative Crockett, perhaps we should proceed carefully." Crockett cut in without hesitation. "Carefully is exactly what I'm doing, Mr. Chairman. We owe the public the truth, nothing less." She tapped her fingernail once against the thick folder on her desk. The sharp sound echoed into the microphone, carrying across the chamber. Suddenly, it wasn't just a folder, it was a weapon. The room stiffened, cameras zoomed in, reporters whispered, and Trump blinked. For years, he had commanded rooms with force and bravado. But in this moment, with Crockett steady and millions watching, the balance shifted. It wasn't his room anymore. In a studio in Los Angeles, a news producer barked into her headset, "Keep it live. Don't cut to commercial. This is gold." At the same time, living rooms across America were locked in. A retired teacher in Ohio muttered to her husband, "He looks scared." A truck driver in Kansas City texted his brother, "Are you watching this? He's losing it." Every reaction outside was being shaped by the silence inside. Crockett wasn't just questioning Trump, she was cornering him, live, in front of millions. And she hadn't even revealed the biggest detail yet. The longer she waited, the more. The cracks showed without rushing. She reached for the folder as calmly as if she were lifting a glass of water. The snap of the metal clasp echoed in every mic. The room leaned in. "I'd like to enter into the record a set of sealed documents from Federal Archives documents indicating a potential DNA match between the President of the United States and a young woman whose existence has never been disclosed to this body or to the American people." The words hit like thunder. Reporters fumbled with keyboards, lawmakers straightened in their seats, and the gallery erupted until the chairman's gavel demanded order. Trump leaned in, his face red. "That's classified material, it's sealed for a reason. You can't just wave papers around and pretend they mean something." Crockett stared directly at him. "Mr. President, sealed doesn't mean imaginary. These are not rumors, they are signed, authenticated, and verified through official channels." I'll ask again, were national security officials ever informed of this possible connection? Trump's hands twitched against the desk. "This is a smear, a disgusting personal smear. I won't dignify it with an answer." Crockett didn't let go. With all due respect, sir, your refusal to answer is an answer. And it raises a bigger question. If this information was hidden, who was it hidden from, and why? The chairman tried again to regain control, but the hearing was no longer his. It was Crockett's stage, and she knew exactly how to hold it. From behind her, a colleague leaned forward and whispered, "Are you sure about this?" Crockett didn't even turn her head. Positive, Trump slammed his hand down. "This is a witch hunt? That's all this is. Witch hunt after witch hunt. You people are sick." Trump's words echoed through the chamber, but instead of ending the moment, they only fueled it. Crockett placed one of the documents flat on the table. She didn't read from it yet, she just let it sit there where every camera could see. "This file," she said slowly, "details not only the existence of a DNA link, but also its implications for security clearance, conflicts of interest, and undisclosed personal ties. That is why we're here, Mr. President. This isn't gossip, it's national security." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Even some Republicans shifted uneasily, glancing at one another as if questioning how far this could go. Trump shook his head violently. No, I won't stand for this. I want the cameras off. Do you hear me? OFF. This is not for television, shut them down." But the cameras didn't shut down, they zoomed in. Millions of Americans were now watching the president beg for secrecy while Crockett calmly laid the evidence before him. She turned her gaze back to him. "Mr. President, transparency is not optional. Every American watching deserves to know if their leader has hidden ties that compromise his judgment." For the first time, Trump hesitated. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes flicked to the folder. He swallowed hard. A reporter in the back whispered into her recorder, "He's cracking. This is it." Crockett slid the top sheet forward just enough for the cameras to catch the official seals and dates stamped across the page. She didn't need to explain what was written, the markings spoke for themselves. Screenshots would circulate online. Before the hearing even ended, Trump's voice turned sharp, almost pleading. "You don't know what you're doing, you're putting the country at risk. This is sabotage." But Crockett shook her head slowly. "The only risk, Mr. President, is letting secrets rot in the shadows while asking the American people for their trust. Secrets like this don't stay hidden forever. The truth always finds light." The silence that followed wasn't ordinary. It was the kind that held everyone in suspense, hanging on every word, every second. Across the country, families exchanged stunned looks. A teenager in Arizona whispered to his mom, "Did she just say he has a daughter?" In Wisconsin, an older man muttered to his wife, "Look at him, he's sweating." The shock wasn't just in Crockett's words, it was in the way she delivered them. Calm, precise, surgical, and for Trump, each second slipping by was one he couldn't control. But Crockett wasn't finished. The next revelation would cut even deeper. The chairman's gavel pounded again, but the noise barely registered above the tension flooding the chamber. Everyone knew what was happening. The balance of power was shifting, and it wasn't in the president's favor. Crockett sat steady, folder open in front of her, while Trump leaned forward like a cornered fighter, jabbing his finger toward the cameras. "This is a disgrace. We will not keep broadcasting lies to the American people." "Shut it down," I said, "shut it down." The cameras, of course, didn't move. If anything, the red lights seemed to glow brighter, capturing every second of his unraveling. Crockett waited for his outburst to fade, then leaned toward her microphone. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Mr. President, your reaction speaks louder than anything I could say. If these documents were baseless, you deny them outright and move on. Instead, you're asking the American people to look away." Crockett's words cut through the chamber like a blade. Across the room, Representative Clancy of Ohio, one of Trump's strongest allies, slammed his hand on the table. "This is a circus. She's out of line, Mr. Chairman. She's grandstanding for the cameras." Crockett turned slightly, her voice steady. "With respect, Congressman, the cameras aren't here for me. They're here because the American people have a right to know if their president is hiding crucial information. I don't fear these lights. Clearly, someone else does." The gallery gasped. Trump's face hardened, his lips curling as he snapped, "That's enough. Do you know who you're talking to? I'm the president. I decide what's enough." Unshaken, Crockett opened the folder wider, sliding another document forward so the cameras could catch the header, Office of Federal Archives, sealed record. She tapped the page once. "The record exists, Mr. President. Records don't care about titles or power, they simply exist." Trump shoved his chair back so hard it screeched across the floor. "You don't understand, this is dangerous. You're putting a family at risk. You're putting this country at risk." His voice cracked on the word family, and every microphone caught it. Crockett leaned in, sharp as a knife. "Which family, sir?" The room froze, the question hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Trump didn't fire back. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down, eyes darting, searching for an escape. That silence, those few seconds, were louder than anything he could have said. From the press row, one reporter whispered just loud enough for others to hear, "He doesn't know what to say." The chairman tried to restore order, but the hearing was beyond procedure now. This was about control, and everyone in the room could see who had it. Crockett leaned back, calm as ever. "The American people see what's happening. You want the cameras off because you know once the truth comes out, you can't take it back. You can't bury it again." Trump leaned forward, his face flushed, gripping the microphone like he could strangle the sound out of it. "If you think you can intimidate me, you're wrong. This is fake like everything else, and anyone who believes it is a fool." But the swagger wasn't there, the words rang hollow. It wasn't confidence, it was desperation. Across the country, people leaned closer to their screens. A college student in Nevada live-streamed the hearing, whispering, "Oh my God, he's losing it," in a Tulsa diner. Late shift workers gathered around the TV, one muttering, "He sounds scared. He's never sounded scared before." Crockett picked up her pen, twirled it once between her fingers, then set it down with care. "This committee isn't here to intimidate. It's here to ask questions, and the only person who seems intimidated by those questions is you." The silence that followed was electric. Even Republicans who wanted to object held back. Interrupting her now could only make things worse for their president. Then Trump made his mistake. He lurched to his feet, his chair screeching against the floor, and jabbed his finger toward the cameras. "Turn them off. Do you hear me? Turn them off." His plea echoed across the chamber, and within seconds, clips of the outburst were already flooding the internet. But Crockett hadn't even revealed the central detail yet. The mention of a daughter was still waiting, and it would make this clash look like a warm-up. The room buzzed with tension. The chairman's gavel cracked again and again, but no one was listening anymore. Every eye was locked on the standoff between the President of the United States and Representative Jasmine Crockett. She didn't rush. She didn't talk over him. She let the words "turn them off" hang in the air like smoke, until it was clear he had nothing left but sputtering outrage. Then, leaning into her microphone, her voice dropped low, forcing the entire chamber to lean in with her. "Mr. President, these records don't just point to a DNA match. They point to a young woman, a woman who, if these files are accurate, is your daughter." Gasps ripped through the chamber, not just from the gallery, but from lawmakers themselves. A Republican arose down, muttered, "Oh my God," before clapping a hand over his mouth. Trump's face went crimson. He slammed both palms on the desk. "Lies, absolute lies. I have no secret daughter, none. You should be ashamed of yourself." But Crockett didn't flinch. She opened the folder wider, pulled out another sheet, and lifted it just high enough for cameras to catch the government letterhead. She didn't read the name. She didn't have to. The seals and stamps were enough. This document was sealed nearly 2 decades ago. It suggests not only paternity, but also a financial arrangement designed to keep this young woman outside public knowledge. That raises questions far beyond family matters. It raises questions of influence, leverage, and risk. The words influence and leverage landed like punches. Reporters pounded their keyboards, their faces lit by laptop screens. Every keystroke Birthing a headline, Trump jabbed at the cameras again, his voice breaking. Cut them now. This is personal. This is private. This is not for television. But on the word private, his voice cracked hard, and Americans at home heard it. Crockett struck. Mr. President, you are not a private citizen. You are the commander-in-chief. When you conceal a child, you're not just hiding from the public, you're creating a vulnerability. A vulnerability that foreign adversaries could exploit. That is why this matters. That is why this committee has a duty to ask these questions. The room buzzed with whispers. On the Republican side, lawmakers covered their microphones, whispering furiously to aides. On the Democratic side, members exchanged wide-eyed looks, realizing they were witnessing a once-in-a-generation moment unfold live. In the gallery, a young man in a blue hoodie leaned toward a friend and whispered, "She really said it." She went there. Trump shook his head hard, his hair shifting with the motion. No, you don't get to do this. I've given everything to this country and you smear me with garbage. This is a disgrace. Crockett's tone stayed calm, like a lawyer cross-examining a witness. Then say it plainly, under oath. Do you deny ever fathering a child who has not been publicly acknowledged? Trump froze. His mouth opened, but the words didn't come quickly enough. The cameras caught the hesitation, and that single pause told its own story. A reporter whispered, "That's it. That's the clip." Crockett leaned back. She didn't need to press. The silence was doing the work for her. Online, the reaction exploded in real time. Hashtags lit up. Hashtag secret daughter. Hashtag Crockett vs Trump. Hashtag cut the cameras. Millions clipped the feed and shared it within seconds, some in disbelief, some in outrage, some unable to look away. In a Toledo bar, the bartender muted the jukebox and turned up the TV. "Listen to her," he said. "She's not even raising her voice, she's just holding him there." Back in the chamber, Trump finally snapped out a denial. "No, there is no daughter. This is fake, completely fake." His words came too fast, tripping over each other like a man trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. Crockett didn't let him redirect the moment. She turned to the chairman. "For the record, I am submitting these files as exhibits. The American people deserve transparency." The chairman, visibly shaken, nodded stiffly. "So ordered." Crockett folded her hands, her gaze locked on Trump. "You can call it fake. You can scream into these cameras. But the truth, Mr. President, doesn't disappear just because you say so." The silence that followed was heavier than any gavel strike could break, and in that silence, millions of Americans made up their minds about what they'd just seen. But Crockett knew this was only the spark. The real fire was about to ignite. The quiet wasn't peace, it was pressure, pressing down on everyone in the chamber as if the marble walls themselves were holding their breath. Jasmine Crockett sat poised, the folder still open before her, while Trump clutched the microphone like he could crush it in his grip. Then, like a dam bursting, the room fractured into shouts. Republican lawmakers erupted, and Representative Clancy leapt from his chair, bellowing across the chamber, "This is a hit job. This entire hearing is a disgrace to Congress." Trump's voice cracked under the strain as aides rushed behind him, whispering in his ear. On the Democratic side, murmurs spread. One lawmaker leaned to another and whispered, "She actually said it." She went straight for it. The reply came quick, and he didn't deny it fast enough. The chairman pounded his gavel, his face pale. "Order, the chamber will come to order." But the chamber wasn't his anymore. Trump raised his voice again, shouting over the noise. "This is nothing but a shaman attack on me, my family, and this country. You're putting the United States at risk with this circus." His words boomed, but instead of calming the room, they fanned the chaos. Members on both sides barked back, some demanding answers, others demanding Crockett be silenced. Through it all, Crockett didn't move. She sat perfectly still, eyes locked on Trump, hands folded over the papers like a lawyer guarding her strongest evidence. Her silence shouted louder than his rage. Finally, she leaned toward the microphone, her voice soft but surgical. If this were false, Mr. President, you would have dismissed it cleanly. Instead, you're demanding the cameras be cut and calling it an attack. That's not the behavior of an innocent man. That's the behavior of someone with something to lose. The words landed like a strike. Trump's face twisted, red flooding his cheeks. Lies, that's all you have, lies and fabrications. I don't have time for this garbage. The American people don't have time for this garbage. Crockett raised one eyebrow, just slightly a flicker of disbelief. Mr. President, with respect, the American people are watching this more closely than anything else you've done this year. That line hit harder than a gavel. Cameras zoomed tighter. On Trump, microphones caught every stumble, every breath. At the back, reporters exchanged frantic glances, realizing they were watching a president lose his grip on the narrative. Live. Representative Wallace from Oregon leaned into his mic. Point of clarification, Representative Crockett is not making a personal attack. She is asking a question that goes directly to matters of national security. The president's response or lack of response is the issue here. Trump spun on him, his voice sharp. You're all in on it, every one of you. You think you can trap me with fake papers with garbage? It won't work. The people see right through this. But outside that chamber, the people weren't seeing through it. They were seeing into it. Across living rooms, phones, and bars, viewers compared Trump's flailing anger to Crockett's steady composure, and the contrast spoke louder than any speech. In Philadelphia, a single mother whispered to her teenage son as they watched, "She's not even raising her voice. Look at him. He's losing it." In a small Iowa town, a farmer shook his head at the TV in his kitchen. You can tell when a man's rattled, he's rattled. Inside the chamber, fallout was immediate. Outside, it was volcanic. Social media lit up with split-screen images, Crockett calm on one side, Trump raging on the other. Memes, hashtags, and raw clips flooded feeds. Secret daughter became the two words no one could escape. Back in the hearing room, the chairman tried desperately to pull control back. Representative Crockett, you will proceed carefully, Mr. President. You will answer questions directly, but neither obeyed. Crockett leaned into her microphone. Mr. President, the longer you shout, the louder the truth becomes. If you want to deny this, deny it under oath plainly, clearly, without hesitation. The gallery gasped. Everyone knew that was the sharpest challenge yet. Trump stared at her, chest heaving, lips tight. He didn't answer, not right away. The pause was deadly. One Republican leaned into his mic, almost pleading. Mr. President, just say it, just say no. But the cameras caught everything. The hesitation, the flicker of calculation in his eyes. And Crockett, never breaking her stare, sat in silence, letting his silence speak louder than any words. Outside that chamber, the story was already exploding. News anchors, social media users, and everyday Americans reacted in real time. Their reactions would shape what came next. What began as a late-night formality had turned into a national moment, one that pulled strangers together around glowing screens. In Los Angeles, producers in a newsroom barked into headsets, "Stay, live, do not cut away. Replay Crockett's line about the daughter the second there's a break." On the monitors, Trump's red face filled the frame, frozen mid-shout, while staffers clipped footage and drafted graphics. President denies secret daughter claim. In Phoenix, a group of college students crowded into a dorm common room. Textbooks shoved aside as they leaned in to watch history unfold. Did she just say he has a daughter? One student asked, eyes wide. Another answered, yeah, and he didn't deny it. He froze. You saw it. The group fell silent, staring at the TV as though history had just stepped into their dorm. In a Pittsburgh bar, the jukebox volume dropped, and the TV volume rose. Patrons gathered in knots around the screen. Look at him, a construction worker muttered, shaking his head. He's begging them to turn the cameras off. He's never done that before, his buddy answered flatly. That's fear. You can't fake that. Across the country, social media boiled. Clips spread faster than networks could broadcast them. On TikTok, one post of the 47-second exchange carried the caption, "The moment Trump begged to cut the cameras." Within minutes, it racked up hundreds of thousands of views. On Twitter, hashtag surged, hashtag secret daughter, hashtag Crockett strikes, #cut the cameras. In living rooms, families argued, cried, or simply sat stunned. In a modest home outside Tulsa, a retired Navy veteran pointed at the screen, "He's compromised. If it's true if there's a daughter he never disclosed, that's a hole big enough for any foreign power to drive through." In Detroit, a mother held her phone in one hand and her daughter's homework in the other. "She's brave," she muttered. "Crockett's brave. Nobody else has ever gotten him this cornered." Even in rural Montana, where shaky internet barely kept the live stream going, a family crowded around their kitchen table, watching the grainy feed buffer and load. The father said quietly, "I've never seen him sweat like this." The contrast was impossible to miss. Crockett's calm, surgical questioning against Trump's frantic, desperate demands. America wasn't just watching, it was judging. And in that moment, the verdict was turning against the president. In New York's Times Square, a massive digital billboard broadcast the hearing live. Tourists stopped in their tracks, some holding up phones to record, narrating in disbelief. "You guys, Trump's literally begging them to cut the cameras. This is insane." Cable anchors cut into programming, spinning the moment in real time. One conservative commentator tried to dismiss it. "This is nothing more than a personal smear tactic. It doesn't mean anything." But his co-host cut in sharply, "Then why is he panicking? Why is he begging to cut the broadcast if it's baseless?" In another newsroom in Atlanta, an anchor leaned forward, palms pressed against the desk. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching history. Representative Crockett has forced the President of the United States into a position where he is visibly shaken. We cannot confirm the accuracy of the sealed documents, but what we can confirm is the President's reaction, and that alone is telling. The American public wasn't united in its response. Far from it, some were outraged, calling it a smear. Others exhilarated, calling it justice. Many were simply stunned, not knowing what to believe. But one thing was undeniable: people were talking. Conversations spread like wildfire through texts, group chats, and late-night phone calls. "Turn on the news, you won't believe what just happened. She said he has a secret daughter." The words leapt from screen to screen, state to state, until even those who hadn't been watching tuned in. For Jasmine Crockett, the power of the moment wasn't just in what she revealed, it was in how far her words traveled. She hadn't just cornered Trump in that chamber. She had placed the entire nation in the same seat, watching him squirm under questions he refused to answer. By the end of the hour, millions had already made up their minds. Some believed her, some believed him, but nearly everyone agreed on one thing: something had cracked. And nothing about the presidency felt the same anymore. Inside the chamber, Trump unraveled further, unable to claw back control. The hearing room wasn't a hearing anymore, it was a stage. And the President of the United States was losing his performance. The cameras stayed locked on him, their red lights merciless, recording every twitch, every bead of sweat, every desperate glance. Trump slammed his hand on the table again, his voice rising. "This is a disgrace. This is illegal. I want those cameras off now. Do you hear me? Cut them off." His demand ricocheted through marble and microphones, but the cameras didn't move. They just kept rolling. Crockett tilted her head slightly, composed, as though listening to a child's tantrum. Leaning into her microphone, she spoke slowly, deliberately. "Mr. President, every second you demand secrecy, you prove why this conversation must be in the open. The American people don't trust closed doors. They trust the truth." Her words landed like a gavel strike. Trump jabbed a finger at her. "You're trying to humiliate me. That's what this is. You're tearing me down in front of the world." Crockett shook her head gently. "No, Mr. President, you're doing that to yourself." Gasps rippled across the chamber. Reporters looked up from their laptops, startled by the bluntness of her words. Trump's face darkened. You think You can talk to me like that. I'm the president of the United States. I've built everything, I've beaten everyone. And you some nobody from Texas who think you can corner me? Crockett's eyes didn't waver. I don't need to. Corner you, you walk yourself here. All I did was show the public what you tried to hide. The clash no longer felt like politician versus politician. It felt raw, personal, stripped of pretense. In the press row, a reporter leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "He's unraveling." This is the moment. Trump's voice grew louder, sharper, his words tumbling out in a frantic rush. Fake papers, fake story, fake everything. I've never seen her. I don't know her. I don't have a daughter. This is an ambush, total ambush. But instead of strength, the rant looked chaotic. His face flushed, his hand trembled slightly as he pointed at the cameras. Across the country, millions watched, mesmerized by the sight of a man who had built his image on strength and dominance, now begging for escape. Crockett tapped the folder softly. The sound was small, but every microphone caught it. If it's fake, then why the fear, Mr. President? Why the panic? An innocent man doesn't need the cameras off. An innocent man welcomes the light. Trump barked back instantly. Because this isn't politics anymore, this is my family. This is my life you're trying to destroy. And there it was, that word again. Family. It slipped out raw, instinctive. The gallery gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously, others just stared. Why died? Crockett pounced, sharp as a blade. Your family, then you admit there is something here. Trump stumbled, words tripping over themselves. No, I know, that's not what I said. Don't twist my words. Don't you twist my words. But it was too late. The cameras had already captured the stumble, the hesitation, the crack. Across America, viewers reacted instantly. In Tampa, a grandmother pressed her hand over her mouth. He said family, she whispered. In an Oklahoma diner, a waitress poured coffee without looking away from the screen. He's falling apart, she murmured. Back in the chamber, Trump clutched the microphone like a lifeline, his voice pleading now instead of commanding. Please cut the cameras. This doesn't belong here. This doesn't belong to the public. End it. His words echoed, heavy with something few had ever heard from him. Desperation. Crockett didn't blink. Mr. President, nothing belongs to you alone. When you took that office, you swore an oath to the American people. And oaths don't come with escape clauses. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Trump's allies shifted uneasily, whispering to one another. For once, none of them rushed to defend him. And outside in newsrooms, living rooms, and barzankas and citizens repeated the same stunned line. He begged them to stop. The soundbite would become the defining moment of the night, replayed endlessly, dissected on panels, clipped into every feed. But inside the chamber, Crockett hadn't landed her final blow yet. She had revealed the documents. She had mentioned the daughter. She had driven the president into desperation. Now, the stage was set not for her personal victory, but for something larger. The room was still thick with Trump's frantic pleas, his voice echoing like a storm that wouldn't fade. Then, in a single pivot, Jasmine Crockett shifted the weight of the moment away from him. She leaned forward, the microphone catching every syllable. Her voice was calm, deliberate. This is not about humiliating one man. This is about whether the highest office in our country can be trusted. The question is not just about a daughter, it's about honesty. It's about whether secrecy has compromised the president's ability to lead without leverage or threat hanging over him. The words landed like stones in water, rippling across the chamber. Reporters sat straighter, fingers flying over keyboards. Even lawmakers who had been shouting moments earlier fell quiet. Trump gripped his microphone again. That's not true, none of it's true. This is a smear. Crockett turned to face him fully, unblinking. If it were smear, you would have denied it plainly. Instead, you begged to cut the cameras. Instead, you admitted twice this is about family. Those are not. The words of a man with nothing to hide. Gasps broke out across the gallery. Even the chairman, who had spent the hearing desperately trying to hold order, Looked rattled, Crockett didn't stop. She opened her folder once more, holding up another page without reading it. This is not gossip. This is an official record. Whether you admit it or not, this document exists. And every second you avoid answering, it becomes less about me and more about you. Trump's voice rose again, but the force was gone. You're twisting everything. You don't know what you're putting this country in danger. Crockett leaned in, cutting through his words with surgical precision. The only danger, Mr. President, is in secrets that can be used against you. If foreign governments know what you're hiding, then they have leverage over you that even this Congress does not. That is not just personal, that is national security. For the first time all night, Trump didn't shout back. He sat still, breathing heavily. Trump's eyes darted toward the papers on the table. The silence said everything. Crockett turned from him and addressed the chamber. This is bigger than Donald Trump. This is about every future president, about whether we allow personal secrets to put this country at risk. If we don't demand transparency now, then we send a message that it's acceptable for those in power to hide the truth, no matter the cost. The line resonated. Reporters scrambled to type it word for word. On screens across the nation, anchors paused to repeat it. This is bigger than Donald Trump. In homes across America, people nodded. In Ohio, a middle-aged man whispered to his wife, "She's right. If he can hide something this big, what else can any of them hide?" Crockett wasn't grandstanding. Her voice never rose, her gestures stayed minimal. But her steadiness, her conviction, carried more force than shouting ever could. She was no longer interrogating Trump, she was speaking to the nation. Every young person watching tonight should remember one thing, she said, her tone softening, steady as stone. The truth has weight. It can be delayed, it can be buried, but it cannot be erased. The truth will always find light. And when it does, it exposes those who fear it most. Trump muttered into his microphone, but his words were drowned out by hers. The gallery sat frozen, no whispers, no movement, just the kind of silence that falls when everyone knows they've witnessed something unforgettable. On social media, the clip spread instantly. "This is bigger than Donald Trump" trended within minutes. Side-by-side screenshots circulated. Crockett calm and composed, Trump flushed and frantic. One viral post read, "History books will show this screenshot." Even commentators who rarely agreed found themselves aligned. On one conservative network, a host admitted she cornered him, and he cracked. Whether you agree with her or not, she won the moment, and in that instant, Crockett became something more than a freshman representative. She became the face of accountability, the person who said plainly what others tiptoed around. She looked back at Trump one last time, her voice quiet but cutting. "This isn't about you anymore, Mr. President. This is about the truth." And the truth doesn't beg for cameras to be cut. The silence that followed wasn't just silence, it was recognition. Everyone in that chamber and everyone watching at home knew she had turned the tide, but history isn't made in a single moment. It's made in what comes after. The aftermath of the clash shook the country long after the cameras stopped rolling. The gavel finally struck hard enough to rattle the desk, but by then control of the hearing had vanished. The broadcast had already taken on a life of its own, spilling into living rooms, phones, and conversations nationwide. Inside the chamber, voices eventually quieted. Outside, the storm was only beginning. Within minutes, anchors across every network replayed the now infamous clip. Trump pleading, "Cut the cameras. Turn them off." Side by side, they showed Jasmine Crockett's steady gaze and her words echoing like a verdict. The truth doesn't beg for cameras to be cut. In Boston, nurses crowded a break room TV. "I've never seen him like that," one whispered. "He looked scared," another shook her head. It wasn't just him, she looked like she'd been waiting her whole life to say that. In Dallas, a father scrolled through his phone at the dinner table while his teenage son asked, "So, is it true? Does he really have a daughter?" The father didn't answer right away. He just sighed. What matters, son, is that he couldn't answer. At a gas station in Indiana, a cashier and a customer stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on a tiny TV above the counter. "She broke him," the cashier whispered. "I never thought I'd see that." The reactions weren't uniform. Supporters defended Trump online, calling the documents forged. The hearing is set up. But even their defenses couldn't erase the images burned into the public mind. A president panicking under the lights, and a young representative holding steady, unshaken. In Washington, pundits scrambled to frame the night. On one network, a panelist argued this was a political ambush. Representative Crockett crossed the line. Another shot back, "No, Trump crossed the line years ago. She just showed what happens when secrets finally catch up to you." The hearing dragged on for hours, but by then, nobody cared about the official record. What lived in memory were those 47 seconds of desperation and the sentences Crockett carved into history. By morning, newspaper headlines screamed, "Crockett confronts Trump over secret daughter," and President begs to cut cameras in stunning exchange. Editorials debated the implications for national security, for the presidency, for the future of politics. But beyond the analysis, one truth was clear. Jasmine Crockett had shifted the national conversation, and she had done it. Without shouting, her words traveled into classrooms, workplaces, and homes. Teachers even replayed the clip as a civics lesson, showing students what accountability is supposed to look like. Pastors spoke of it from pulpits, comparing it to biblical warnings about truth and hidden sins. Families debated it over breakfast, each with their own view of what it meant for the country. And through all the noise, one lesson rose clear: power built on secrecy is fragile. One moment of exposure can bring it crashing down. Crockett's performance wasn't careful strategy, it was conviction. She didn't scream, she didn't trade insults. She stood on truth, and truth alone. That was why her words carried weight. That was why Americans, no matter their politics, felt the gravity of what she did. For Trump, the clip became a scar he couldn't cover. His desperate plea to cut the cameras was replayed endlessly, analyzed by experts, mocked in memes, debated in town halls. People asked not only if he had a daughter, but what else he might be hiding. What other secrets would crack under pressure? For Crockett, it became the defining moment of her career. Overnight, she wasn't just a rising lawmaker, she was a symbol of accountability. The woman who stared down the president on live television and didn't blink. And for America, it was a reminder: leaders are not untouchable. Titles don't shield you from the truth. When you sit in that office, your secrets don't belong to you, they belong to the nation you swore to serve. As the dust settled, the clip continued to spread. Some watched in anger, others in awe, but everyone remembered it. Not just for the scandal, but for what it revealed about power, fear, and honesty. In the end, it wasn't about Crockett or Trump, it was about the truth. And the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always fights its way to the surface. History has shown us the truth waits, it watches, and when it arrives, it doesn't ask permission. So the next time you see a leader try to shut off the cameras, remember this moment. Remember that silence, fear, and avoidance always tell their own story. Secrets can be hidden for a time, but the truth always outlives them. And if you want more stories that shine a light on truth, accountability, and the moments that change history, don't forget to subscribe. The next story might just be the one that makes you rethink everything.